in the now is respected British MP George Galloway. He was brutally beaten in London over the weekend, and it seems because of his comments and his general position on the conflict in Gaza. This is his first television interview. Thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you're well. How are you feeling after this brutal attack?
Well, I'm in a lot of pain. It's very painful to walk, to move, even to speak, because I sustained a dislocated jaw, quite bad head injuries, and most especially very badly cracked ribs. And if any of your viewers have ever had cracked ribs, you'll know what I mean when I say that there can be no pain like it this side of unconsciousness. So I'd be lying if I said I was feeling well, but I'd like to take the opportunity to thank RT, for whom I present a weekly show, of course, and all its correspondents and viewers for all their good wishes.
Well, even more so then, thank you for joining us. I know this is painful for you. You look very well, I'd like to add. We know you were attacked in broad daylight. The motive is apparently political. How exactly did this happen? Take us through it.
Well, I was in the street around 7:30, 7:35 in the evening. It was broad daylight. Unlucky for me, there weren't many people around, though luckily for me, as it turned out, none of my small children were there to witness what happened next. I was posing for a picture with two Moroccan gentlemen who had a business in the street, and whilst I was posing for that picture, out of nowhere, dressed in an Israel Defense Force shirt, complete with logo, came a man charging at me, cursing and swearing and shouting support for Israel and opposition to my views on Israel. And then a torrent of punches and kicks, which he's admitted in court today, though he has pled not guilty to the charge that it was religiously aggravated. And in any case, the judge has referred it to a much higher court because his sentencing powers were not sufficient. The man has been denied bail, so he'll spend some weeks now in prison before this matter comes back to court. The man was a pro-Israel fanatic. His Facebook that morning contained his words that he would like to cut my throat. And so a man who says he'd like to cut your throat and then dresses for the occasion in an Israel Defense Force t-shirt and ends up on the street near where you live has probably a serious intention to do you harm. It's unprecedented in recent times. Britain's not really the kind of country where lawmakers, legislators, members of parliament are savagely attacked in this way. Certainly not when they're 6 times elected, 27 years in parliament, and having just turned 60, I'm sorry to say.
We asked our audience if they had questions for you. They did indeed. We've got great responses. I want to read one of them to you. One viewer asked, does the lack of response from fellow MPs indicate their support for Israel?
Well, it is something quite serious. It's been remarked on by a Conservative writer, Peter Oborne, in the Conservative Daily Telegraph newspaper just this very afternoon. Mr. Oborne asked the question, why has not a single senior politician or any politician in Britain condemned this attack? It seems very strange. They're always telling us how much they hate violence and terrorism, how much they believe in the rule of law, and how much they believe in free speech and democracy. But when it came to the attack on me, their lips were sealed. And this Conservative columnist was making the point, which is obvious, if this can happen to Galloway, it can happen to anybody.
We don't want any Israeli goods. We don't want any Israeli services. We don't want any Israeli academics coming to the university or college. We don't even want Israeli tourists to come to Bradford, even if any of them had thought of doing so. This is what you've said about Israel lately. Do you think this could come across as anti-Semitic?
No, Israel has nothing to do with Judaism. Many Jews are against what Israel is doing, and most of the people supporting what Israel's doing are not Jews. The word Jew never crossed my lips, would never cross my lips. I don't have a racist bone in my body. When people like Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher were evincing their hatred of the Soviet Union, they would have been quick to point out that they had no hatred for the Russian people. The Soviet Union was a political construct. Apartheid South Africa was a political construct. And the Zionist apartheid state of Israel is a political construct. It's nothing to do with hating people, still less hating a religion.
Do you think that the Israeli government is the only responsible side for the recent violence that we've seen? What about Hamas? Do they bear responsibility for the violence?
Well, the Palestinian resistance has for almost 70 years been trying to restore their country to the map. It was wiped off the map and the Palestinian people scattered to the four corners of the earth. Now, nobody would accept that. You wouldn't accept it. My country wouldn't accept it. If foreigners come and steal your country and wipe it off the map and take your house and drive you out, you're going to struggle to return. And it is the legal and moral right of the Palestinian people to resist the occupation of their country.
Israel has announced a major land grab on the West Bank, in the West Bank, I should say, on Sunday, some 400 hectares. A lot of people are going to argue that this is wrong, but these are, of course, the government actions. You pointed it out with separating, back during the Cold War, Soviet Union from Russia. Should the Israeli people be implicated here?
Well, 96% of the Israeli public supported the attack on Gaza consistently every week throughout the 5-week assault, nearly 6 weeks. These reputable polls showed that only 4% of Israelis opposed them. Of course, any Israeli citizen who is against the apartheid system, who is against the Zionist settler state, is a comrade of mine, and many of them, now in exile, are. Professor Ilan Pappé, for example, of Exeter University, formerly Haifa University, is one of my closest comrades, and he's not just Jewish, but an Israeli citizen. But I'm afraid, though they are the bravest people on the earth, the opposition to the apartheid system in Israel are very, very small in number.
British MP George Galloway with us in the Now. Thanks so much for your time, and do get well soon. Stay safe.
Thank you so much. Thank you.